and then we can get started.
Awesome.
All right, I think that's you, Jonah.
Hey, awesome. Hey, everyone. Welcome to week one. Hope everyone had a good week of pairing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How was this week? I don't know if Mandy, you want to kick us off with how was pairing with Jordan? I know he's not here, so you can really say anything.
Yeah, I might as well. Everything is going smooth sailing until I saw the notes that Shalom and Fatima left about the error, and I was like, I didn't see that before. So I went and looked into it, and I realized that yes, we indeed did program an infinite loop. And April gave me a suggested solution, so I tried that out. I set up a new database, and it is working. I can share my screen if you'd like.
Yeah.
Get that going. I'm going to turn my video off because when I share, it lags quite a bit.
Sounds good.
Let's see. All right, so I've got the app running with the fix in place right now. You can see here, this is my just a test database.
Yeah, because we have to wait for the actual database to reset for tomorrow, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, we would have to. I got really good at standing up quick test databases.
How many did you need to set up?
I think this is my second or third.
Oh, wow.
Just because I think I was being impatient, and I was kind of messing around with the code and made it worse. So I was like, I'm just going to set up a new database. But it looks good now. So right now it's reading, it has 102 reads. So let's go ahead and add an item here and clear this out. I was also watching my network calls. I do think it's kind of strange that it has 2 post requests when I refresh.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
You know, that's something that I've noticed too within React is oftentimes if I log something, it'll log twice. I keep meaning to ask somebody who has more experience than me, but I think it has something to do with the way the components, there's a paint step and then a render step or something. So it's possible that that's just kind of a nature of React. But now that you've reminded me, I do need to ask somebody because that's something I've always been curious about, but I noticed it very consistently across the board. And so never worried about it, but I'd be curious to know what it is.
Okay, I'm not alone in that. Okay, so here you can see we've got 3 items. So you might expect it, and I noticed too when I watch the network calls, more will filter in. So again, not sure if I need to be concerned with that or not, but we've got a 3rd one that just got added. They probably both say state 0. This one with state 1000 is when I put in manually. It may take a while for this to update. So while that happens, I can just show my code. See if it's actually, I would expect it to say 105 eventually. So we're not quite there yet. So I did actually also take this variable name out because you're right. Again, April, we weren't using it. So I took this opportunity to fix that. And I refactored the use effect. So here's how it looked like before. Basically, this get users collection, wasn't it outside of? Yeah, it was up here outside of the use effect.
That was a dependency.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's showing it, or at least maybe I'm not explaining it correctly. Let's see. Maybe it's easier to see here. Here we go. So there are my changes. And hopefully would fix this infinite loop problem. Let's go ahead and refresh and see if it actually updated. Not yet.
Still kind of loading.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a few minutes to actually show up there. Which now I know, yeah, even if I made a mistake, that I won't see it right away necessarily. Although
So then,
Go ahead.
finish your thought. Finish your thought.
I was gonna say, oh, new items do get added right away, but they
Mhm.
just don't show up.
It's just
here
like
right
the
away.
usage log kind of lags a little bit behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing on the app itself, though, that it's still only listing 2.
Oh, there's
So
3.
is there 3?
Oh, do you mean here?
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead and refresh. Oh, so maybe when I added the new item, it did not actually update the list.
yeah. So then when you refresh, it
Mm.
brings that third one up. And that's the one caveat to what we have right now, which is that the use effect isn't watching for anything. So it will only run and update that collection on mount, which is why you had to hard refresh that page to get the third one to show up. So you may want to, I'm not sure, because last time we did this with hooks and it's only my second time working with this app. My instinct is to add an additional state element that has a Boolean that the handle submission toggles so that it has something to listen for that you could put in as a dependency to the use effect so that when you hit the handle submission for adding an item, I don't know if that is the solution that will carry us through to the end of this, the purpose of this application. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that would be my first thought.
There's also like an ability to add like listeners from the Firebase libraries. I think they have a listener function.
Technically, that get docs is a listener function. It calls with the new V9 from what I was reading up on it. It calls the collection, but it actually does a query snapshot. So it checks to see like if there's updates. So somehow we need to either create our own custom hook that just constantly listens or somehow trigger it to go recheck.
Yeah. Well, I think this might be a good candidate for to create another issue potentially. So we can track this. So we can track this work.
Okay.
Because I think this is a good kind of fix for what we have, and then also like a good future kind of proofing. Like, how do we make this reactive, or like listen to the database? But yeah, this is awesome. Good find. Thank you, April.
Yeah.
And helping out with that.
Well, I'm glad, Mandy, that you posted that out in Slack so that I
Yeah.
had the opportunity to know that you were up against something that was a little odd.
Yeah, I appreciate your help. Thank you.
And thanks from the code review comments, Fatima and Shalom as well. Like that's how we kind of found that stuff out. Yeah.
So can I go ahead and pass the mic and then I'll plan on opening up a new PR for this? Okay.
Yep.
Well, I have something to bring up about the first issue. When I checked out, I don't know if this was just an issue with just my machine, but when I checked out the branch for the first issue and tested it out in my machine, I got an error that there was a library Chokidar was missing. I think that was what the error was. And then to get the to be able to start the server, I had to install Chokidar.
Hmm.
Yeah, I also had the same error. But I didn't, I did an npm install and then it seemed to work fine after that. I don't know if it's an issue with the version, like the newer versions of Node. But yeah, I did also have the same error.
This is something that I noticed about this cohort and last, Jonathan. So I don't know, maybe again, leaning into your experience on this. I know that the first steps in the README state to do an NPR, an NPM update, and that's partially why so many people ended up on Firestone 9
Yeah, yeah.
and ran into the issues in the first place because they didn't pin the Firestore version. But then what I noticed last time around was that it seems we get this cycle effect of like the NPM versions of all of the things never really quite get met. Like I think at one point we finally got our, I think somebody did the NPM update and then added that to main so that when everybody pulled their branches down, they were all working. And then they just did NPM install from that point forward.
Yeah.
But I noticed that there were different line numbers in the two different branches. Like one was only 7,000 lines changed, the other was 8,000 lines changed. So I don't know how to get those. I feel like that's a little confusing to a lot of us, even those of us who have been working around for a while, because I don't work with those kind of installs on my code base at work very often. So yeah, I almost feel like that should be an initial step done before we start the project, is just get everything up to date.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out to make. But yeah, I think you're right. Like how I've done that work in the past, just like with like code bases at work, is to npm install on one branch and then have everyone like push that to main and then have everyone pull main and then just run, npm update on one branch, push that to main, and then everyone runs npm install off that branch. I think that might be a good like kind of stopgap for now. At least to stop these, like, because everyone will have different versions, and then every time you like pull down someone's branch, you'll have like a wrong version. So if everyone has the same kind of package JSON log file, I would think we can just run install on that and it would all just work.
Yeah.
Does that
and that
right?
makes sense that, you know, in regards to also the Fatima, like they did add libraries which have dependencies. So that's probably where you needed that extra dependency. So doing the npm install like Shalom did was it'll check all of your libraries and their dependencies and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. So running that npm install when you first pull a branch is often a good step to take, just to make sure if there's anything added that everything gets updated.
And then should I also do npm update or no, just npm install? Okay.
Yeah, once we get which we might be there now, I don't know. Once we have a stable JSON lock, like package JSON lock that everybody's using, then you can just do the install to make sure that if anything's been adjusted, that you get those changes.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. Okay. How else was it? How was the pair? Was this anyone's first time pairing with people?
Oh, this is one first time pair programming.
That's awesome.
It was different because I'm used to just like doing everything in my head and doing everything fast. And then now like I have to like slow down and like it's nice like discussing everything. And I think I get like a better understanding of what we're doing too, just by just slowing down.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that the experience that anyone else had?
I've done some paired programming in the bootcamp that I was in, but I think it wasn't as much. I mean, it wasn't a lot of work this week, but I still felt like I learned a lot through the pair programming. And I felt also it's a good way to kind of test yourself and see how much you really understand of what you're doing, because on your pair programming, you have to kind of explain your thought process. And so I really like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing I've been feeling the most need to practice, is expressing like, what am I really doing here? You know, when we implemented a fix, why did it work now?
Yeah.
Like that's the, you know, that's the meme, right? Like my code works. Wait, why does it work?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the most valuable part of pair programming for sure.
Yeah, totally. It's also like the hardest part as well, just trying to like explain your thought while also typing code is, I find that really hard. Like my brain just doesn't want to do things, and I just forget how to type sometimes. I'm like, how do I spell this word? Like I don't understand. But that's good. That's great experiences. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. So I know, sorry, I'm like monopolizing the time here. I know we have 40 minutes left, so I want to jump straight into the demos and then the code review learning module. Is that cool, April?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So we'll do demos every, I think, odd number week, and then every other week we'll do like a retros where you kind of, it's more of like a group discussion to see how things are going, and kind of talk about like how to improve and like what is going well, which is kind of similar to what you would do at a real job. But with demos, this is a great opportunity to share what you've done throughout the week, share like your knowledge, any lessons, show your work through either like localhost on your machine or the preview URL. And it's a good way to get the whole team to understand the current state of the project. And it's a skill that you'll like want to kind of build, especially when you get to a job as well, because you'll be doing a lot of demos and talking to stakeholders and making sure that everyone is up to date with what is happening right now in the project, especially when you're pairing on separate things. Maybe when this week kind of all pairing on the same thing, all three of you will be working together. You don't need to share that context, but when you have two separate pairs, it's always nice to like know what the other pair is doing. So I would definitely suggest sharing your screen, showing your code, things like that. And who wants to kick us off with a demo? They all jumping at once.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can start.
Cool, do it. Also, if it's cool, if you could go through like just the issue and acceptance criteria, just as like a nice little refresher of like what we were doing.
Sure. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Awesome.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Sure can.
Yeah.
Okay. So we worked on the second user story. Basically, this is the story. A user should be able to navigate between the list view and the add and items view so that the interface is clearly delineated between the viewing and adding. So we basically had four action items, and the first one is to install React Router DOM so that we can use React Router for updating the links. And then we also had basically the links should be present at the bottom of the page, and one is the list view and one is a link to an add items view. And basically, when you click on one link, a couple of things update. Like the browser URL will update depending on which link you clicked on. And then the matching view component is also displayed. And then lastly, whichever view is selected, the corresponding link would display in bold text. So these are the four things that we worked on. And I already have it up and running. So I know Zoom kind of sometimes gets in the way. So can everybody see the links at the bottom?
Yeah.
Sure can.
Okay. Okay. So as you can see right here on localhost 3000, and there are two links or buttons here. There's the list view and the add items. And so basically when we click on the list view, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to render the appropriate view, which would be the list view in this case. And then we also have the URL updating so that it's, displaying the list. And then we also have the text in bold text right here, the link in bold text. And the same with if we navigate to add items, then it will update the view, will update the URL, and then also update the text style as well. So this is what we worked on. And I think Fatima is going to go through the code. And I think, I'll stop sharing so that you can go ahead.
All right, I'll share my screen right now. All right, so from React Router DOM, we imported the browser router, switch root, and the nav link. And inside the app function, first we added the router component, and the router component is what keeps the UI in sync with the URL. And then next we added the nav links right here. The nav links have the to property, which is the path name. And the path name is what corresponds with the root. The root is what renders the component, the view component. The nav link, it also has the active class name prop, which is set to active. So when you click one of the links, when you click list link, for example, then the list component is going to include the class name is going to include the active or this name, so active. And the styling for active is font weight 700, which makes it bold. Next, we added the switch component, which consists of the roots. And without the switch component, then if multiple items matched, then they would be rendered at the same time. So that's why we need the switch. And the roots have the path name property, which corresponds to the to property in the link. And the view components we created were the list and add item view components, which we have here in the pages folder. And each component is just a simple function with div and text.
Great, really nice.
Awesome, nice work.
Really
Nice work on sorting out the nav links and getting those working.
Yes.
Thanks for the suggestion for the
Yeah.
nav link.
I always love when our tools give us a nice little handy helper.
Yes. That's awesome. Yay, well done. Cool. Well, Mandy?
Yeah. So can I piggyback a little bit off of what we were doing earlier?
Of course.
Yeah. For sure.
Let's see if I can get my camera shared again, or my screen shared again. All right, so the database did update from earlier, which like I mentioned, I thought it might go up to 105 because there's 3 files and it was at 102, but now it's at 122. So I don't know if this is indicative of a problem or it's just something about the way those snapshots are created. We can come back to that. But I thought I would circle back around.
It does seem like it's mitigated to some point though, because you were hitting like 74,000 and you're still only in the hundreds. So this may be closer to what would be considered the behavior. Like there might still be some improvements to be made, but we've definitely come a long way.
Right. So here's our requirements. We needed to add, which this changed, we needed to add Firebase as a dependency. And we needed to be able to make updates to the database from the app and also read the database entries from the app. And we did achieve those, but clearly we did so with the loop. So overachieving, I guess, in a way. Go back to our code here, which yeah, now it's going to need some revision, but we set an initial state of 0, and then we incremented state by 1 with this button function. to add a new item to our database. And then we read that out in a list. We mapped over each item from the database in a list in a return statement here. And this use effect is the source of all of our troubles. So it may change, but it is definitely better than it was. That's how we're fetching data from the database. I think that's about it for my demo.
Awesome.
Anybody
And
have any questions?
yeah, just do you mind showing? So if you just go to your local host or whatever your React app is running.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and just and then yeah, if you add an item now, do you have to refresh this page? I assume you would after
I
adding it.
I can refresh it. I think, yeah, I will have to do that
Okay.
to get it to show because I changed our use effect.
That makes sense.
So I'll go ahead and add an item and refresh that, and it should show 4 items now. There we go. There's your 4th
Cool.
item.
Yep.
All right.
Cool, cool.
Anything else?
Well done.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, just something for you to monitor as you go through. It looks like you're setting your state to be your state +1. And then because you're having to hard refresh, that state is also getting reset, which is why it's always setting itself to 0.
Right.
So just as you continue to work on that use effect and find a way for it to trigger itself without having to have a remount.
Right.
Yeah. That'll
Thank
give you
you.
one indication.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So you didn't really talk about it, but I wanted to bring it up. I know that this week, the instructions and the original intention was for us to be able to use those React Firebase hooks. And you weren't able to do that because of the upgrade and all of that. So really, really, truly nice job of just staying calm and going through the documentation and sorting out what needed to be done, because it did take that issue to a level that it wasn't initially. And you guys did a really, really great job of just kind of working it out and not panicking. And that was really, really great job.
Thanks. Yeah, Jordan and I we worked well together through that. We're just like, well, let's go through documentation one by one. And other groups, were really, really helpful too.
Yeah.
In sharing resources and that, we're not struggling alone on it.
Yeah. For sure. That was a cool, kind of club-wide kind of effort there.
I love Stacy's comment. She says, "This has never felt more like real life than right now." It's like
100%. 100%. Like, oh, well, package the library just changes their entire API. Okay, cool. Well, let's just roll with the punches.
That's okay. So that broke things. Let's figure this out.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for doing the demos. Great job again. Yeah, can't say enough. Great job this week. And I will pass off to April.
Yes.
The lay module.
Let's do. Oops, what happened to my? Oh, I went to a different. There we go. Let me get it set up, and I will share my screen. All right, so the learning module for this week is code reviews. I'm not sure how many of you have had circumstances where you've been able to review others' codes, or if this is your first attempt at it, but it is a very important part of the process. So we're going to talk a little bit more about it. So the things that we're going to touch on is going to be like, what is a code review, as well as a code review cycle, giving tips and ideas on what makes a great code review, as well as ways that you can help others review your code, and ways to kind of give you tips on how to review people's code, and then looking at the ways and the tools that exist within GitHub, to help with that process. So what is a code review? Think of it as a conversation about the set of changes. It's a great place to share knowledge and learn from others. It's really nice when you see an individual do something that maybe you haven't done it that way before, to ask the question of why did you decide to use this, method here or whatever, because then you get to learn from their experience, which is great. It is considered more of a collaboration space where you're going to share your work and ask questions. You can ask questions of your reviewer and vice versa. It helps you to improve as a developer. You get to see the different ways that people approach solutions, which just broadens your knowledge. And it also helps your team. It decentralizes the knowledge so that more than one person knows what happened in that particular area of the code, as well as the responsibility to make sure there weren't things that were overlooked or side edge cases perhaps that didn't get noticed by the initial developer. And then that ultimately improves the code base quality. So the code review cycle consists of opening up a pull request, receiving feedback from other developers, making any necessary changes based on that feedback, which loops itself around until we get to a place where everybody's happy with the end result, and then that work gets merged into the main branch. And what makes a code review a great code review? First, you want to avoid focusing on stylistic changes. Most code bases have tools for that, like Prettier, ESLint, type checkers, etc. Sometimes things can get missed if things aren't like I've seen in the past where like if statements are stacked on top of each other and it reads a little clearer to have a space in between them. And so those are the only types where you have like a new line in between them. Those tend to be the only times when I might mention like it'd be nice to have a new line here, but generally I don't call out little things like that. You want to try out the feature locally and in a test environment. To make sure that the functionality that's supposed to occur is actually occurring. Then will you understand this code a month from now is another point of view to take. Makes sense now while I'm looking at the PR and the description, but when I look at this code a month from now, am I still going to understand it? And if there's some clarity that needs to be had, you can leave some comments for the developer at that point. It's always nice to add praise and to default to approval. If you have small changes, I know Mandy and Jordan on your guys's when I had just some small comments, they certainly by no means blocked the work because the work was fine. So, but I did bring them up just because I felt like they were important enough to be addressed at some point, but they certainly didn't block anything from moving forward. And then be kind and empathetic. Somebody put some long, hard hours into that work. So, just recognize that when you're leaving your comments and be respectful. You can help others understand your changes. We're going to work on that in this next section. And then you want to, you want to try to answer all the questions. So whether you're answering it with I did it this way because, and I prefer to do it this way, or whether it's more of that's a good question, and I made these changes, but you want to make sure you address the questions and don't just ignore them. And then take your time when you're going through the code review and, really make sure that you're doing a quality job on it. So trying out the feature locally in a test environment is, I find it to be really important. And I actually take this step before I even look at the code, because if I find edge cases or functionalities that don't quite work the way that it was intended to, or maybe there's an area of the application that I know also uses that component. And so I go to test over there and something broke with the work that they did. They may not have noticed or known that that component was also used in a second location. And so it's nice to be able to call those out. But those kind of call outs are oftentimes going to make the code change. So for me personally, I like to do the functionality test first and check out edge cases and see if there's anything that might be awry there, and then dive into looking at the code itself. And that's kind of what this goes through. So it gives you confidence that the code that they wrote actually does what it's supposed to. It also helps you find things that you wouldn't just from a skim. When you're going through the code, when it's kind of extracted from the rest of the code base and so forth, it's skimming over it, you might not always make a connection for something that isn't as efficient as it could be when you see it in functioning. And then just don't be tempted to skip this step and say, oh, it looks good to me because the code looks good, because you'd be surprised at how many things you find when you functionally test something. The PR should include instructions on how to run the code depending on the team. Usually it's if you need to have like a certain setup or provide data or something to those effects, or, you know, if you need to give a step-by-step, you know, set this up first and then do that. Then that's definitely want to make sure as the developer that you put that instruction in your PR so that those who are reviewing it can access that. And then if you're not sure how to get it set up, ask questions. It's a really great learning opportunity for you to figure out if, you know, reach out to the original developer to say, how do I set this up and test it locally? And then what are ways that you can do to help others review your code? So the most important one is to write a meaningful PR description. And I know you guys did a really great job of that this week around, including the before and after images so that it was really clear of what was to be expected to be seen on the screen. And then as well as giving good instruction or details into what your acceptance criteria were and checking off the boxes to show that you met those. If possible, if you can write meaningful commit messages, those help too. Because sometimes you can go through commit by commit and, you know, based off of the messages makes that a little easier as well. You want to self-review your code to make sure that you didn't overlook something. Maybe you want to leave a notation to explain why you did something if you know it might bring up a little question for someone. And then you can even ask questions like, I did this way, but I'm not sure if it's the most efficient. Can you take an extra look at that for me? And that way your fellow developers can kind of focus in on an area that maybe you weren't as confident in to get some feedback there for sure. And then of course, using the screen capturing tools like you did between doing just screenshots as well as quick like GIFs or QuickTime videos or something just to show the functionality can always really help to let everybody understand what you were wanting to accomplish with your work. And then when you're in GitHub and you're exploring the code there, you can do this if you wanted to, you can do an explore commit by commit. So if you go to the files changed menu there, you can do the changes from one commit and then pick the first commit. And then down over on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's the navigate and you can navigate to the next commit and to the next commit. So when you have a huge file like this one, which is 800 lines of change, it's kind of nice to be able to go through and just kind of get an overview of the commit by commit changes that were made so that you're looking at smaller change sets instead of trying to look at the whole thing all at once. You can also, when you go through your files, you can mark them as viewed so you know where you're at. And that way, if at any point you have to leave the review and come back to it later, you at least know which files you've already gone through and which ones are still left for you to review. And then now this is the time where you get to share your thoughts. So would be really nice to know kind of what your guys' experience has been in the past with code reviews, as well as how you felt the code reviews went this week. And if you felt that the last week or your previous experiences, you know, how's it felt to have your code reviewed?
I thought it was more thorough than my last experiences, which I really appreciate. I appreciate the time everyone took to actually look at it. And I definitely agree on that point of pulling it down and running it locally. That's a habit I got into in my boot camp, and it's definitely a good one to be in.
Yeah.
For me, this was actually my first experience with doing code reviews. So I definitely learned a lot, especially about like pull requests and, you know, not only just reviewing someone else's code, but also the process that, you know, of making sure that everyone has all the information about what you worked on and kind of getting feedback on what you've done as well. So I thought that was really neat and a nice learning experience for me. And it was nice to, you know, get everyone's feedback and yeah, overall good feedback.
Great. How about you?
This was it went pretty good. This was my first code review too. While I was doing it, I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do, but then I saw like those tabs where you can like view the files and view the commits, and that's the first time I've ever seen those. That was pretty interesting to see. And just this learning module is actually pretty helpful, and I have like a better idea now of what to do during the code reviews.
Right. Yeah, just like I did last week, I'll leave a link to this slide deck so that you can access the resources, which includes a lot of reading. If you wanted to look at it a little bit further, just different things about like doing the code reviews, the importance of them, etc.
Yeah, for those maybe Fatima and Shalom, for like first time doing code reviews, especially with the GitHub's UI, I'm not sure, is it worth like potentially going through like clicking around the UI, doing like a screen share that April or I could do, just to share some tricks that like at least I'm use you don't use GitHub though, April, right? You use GitLab.
At work I use GitLab, but it has very similar functionality in regards
yeah.
to being able to leave inline comments and
yeah,
so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, is this something that would be useful just to in case you need to know?
Right now,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that'd be pretty useful.
Just throwing curveballs, sorry. Well, I'm not sure if we want to do this now or like potentially in the office hours as well.
No, of course. They'd be happy to do it now, sure. Do you want me to pull up like one of the PRs from the GitHub?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that'd be cool to show like inline, you can highlight your comments and how like you would navigate around a code base. Or
Yeah,
sorry,
I'll
request.
reshare a screen here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right, so here we're on our open pull requests. And so the only one we still have open right now is Fatima and Shalom. So I'll go ahead and just open that one up. And then as you mentioned, Fatima, there are the different tabs at the top. So there's this main conversation tab, and that's where you can leave your description. And then any comments that are made on the code section will display here at the bottom so that you have one kind of place where you can see the different commits that happened, the things that happened, as well as the work that people put or the comments that people added in. I didn't end up having the opportunity or the need, I guess, on your guys' to do an inline, but I will show you what that does and what it looks like. If you go to this tab here, you can see all of the commits and the dates that they were committed on. So it's one way that you can get to the code and do a commit by commit. So this would, and I believe in this case, this is your first commit. So, and then you can see those buttons that were displayed there and shows you the previous and the next commits. In this case, this was a very large code change, but that's because the majority of that was in our JSON files. So if you click next, it's going to show you what that next commit was, and you can see the changes that were done. So we have the create list and add view links, who was the name of that was put on that commit. And then you can go through and see the different, and this is where that package JSON, which is where the majority of those changes came to. That was like 22,000 lines of code that made an adjustment one way or the other. So yeah, right. So, but you can see it lays it out really nicely for you to show like this line was deleted and this line was added. You can see them side by side, so you can get a sense of what the changes were that were done inside that commit. If there was something that was done that I was like, I'm curious why you made that change, then this little plus button that's hovering, you can click on that and leave a comment directly on that item. And that way you can specify specifically, like, let's say it was this item right here. Now it's going to display so that the code that I'm actually referring to is going to receive the comment directly on it. And the way that'll display on the front, on that overview section. So I'm just going to add this as a single comment. And then when you go back to the conversation page, you'll see that GitHub put in right where I had made the comment and then the comment that I made. And so it's a really nice way to be able to say, within this section of code, I have a question about, this thing that you did. and then the developer who put the pull request up knows exactly the spot of code that you have a question about, instead of trying to like guess. Wait, where is that? What do you mean? So you can do it that way through the commit by commit. If you wanted to go through the checks here, oh, that's just for the pipeline checks, which we have checking that the deploy and everything works. So that's not really a tab that you would go to unless you get an error. Then you can go there and see specifically where it failed. You'd get an X instead of a check, and then you'd be able to get more information about what the error was that happened on that step. So in this case, there weren't any. And then the files changed. It shows you the whole overview of all the files. And you can, again, you can go from the commits and you can look for the first commit and start that way. You can filter by file. So if you want to just check the JS files, you would uncheck everything else and it'll only show you those. You can look by conversations. So you can say, oh, where's that one that she left me the message on? Let me go straight to that message so I can see what she was talking about. And then you can jump to a specific file, or like I know I want to go check in the add items. And so it'll take you directly to that file. And the other item I think is just that you can, if you do a review changes. So you saw when I was doing that message that I had the option of just adding a single comment or starting a review. So if I go in and put in another test here, then I can start a review, and what it'll do is it'll just hold that for me, kind of in a pending status. So I utilize that quite a bit. If I have a question about something, I'll go ahead and leave a comment, there about it. Like, I'm not really sure, what this is doing. And then as I go through the code, maybe I get something later in the code that explains that to me. So then I can go back in and just say, oh, never mind. I actually know what that's doing. I don't need to leave that comment anymore. And I can get rid of that. And then when everything, useful. Yeah. And then when everything's done, then you can do your comment, approve, or request changes, or the choices that you get. You can leave a general comment of, overall everything looks good, but I had a couple of questions. It has the same functionality as the other boxes where you can preview, anything that you've done to make sure it's formatted the way you want. And then you submit the review and it'll submit your main comment and then all of the inline comments that you still have remained in pending state. So did I miss anything, John?
No, this is great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, was that helpful?
Yeah, it was really helpful.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, April. We have Graham next, who's obviously not here, but he sent a video. So we're going to play a video so you can see his face, lovely face. But I just want to point out the acceptance criteria, like one of the issues that he's going to talk about, issue number 3, has changed slightly. The old template was using like a file that doesn't quite exist anymore. So instead it's going to be using a package that kind of Collab Lab has actually published. So most of the ACs are the same, just pointing out that when you do see the issue, it might look a little bit different. So just give an issue a little read, but the majority of it is the same. Cool. Well, I'll share my screen and let's see how this actually plays.
I think if you just make sure you select the box just to play the sound as well, you should be able to just play the video.
All right. Yes, share sound. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna full screen this. Is this already full screen? I'm sure.
No, it's not full screen yet.
All right, full screen. Play.
Hello and welcome to the issues section of today's meeting. First of all, I wanted to apologize for not being able to make today's meeting. Unfortunately, Canadian Thanksgiving is this weekend, and my family decided to want me exactly at our meeting time this evening. Never fear, we'll hopefully see each other again very soon. So first, I just want to congratulate you all on getting your first set of issues done. Just to quickly go over these, the completed issues that were done last week were, as a component, I want to be able to read from and write to the Firestore database so that users can persist information. And the second being, as a user, I want to be able to navigate between the list view and the add an item view. So the interface is clearly delineated between the viewing and adding. And as we saw in the office hours, both of these are pretty much complete. And so we're able to continue on. Congratulations, good work. It was great to see that happen. Now, from what I understand, I believe Jordan is away. So these will all be taken on as a group, as a trio for the next week. And yeah, so let's get into it. So the first one is, as a user, I want to set up a new shopping list so that I can start tracking purchased items. Specifically, the acceptance criteria for this is that for users who do not already have a token or a list, a button or link exists on the home screen that allows them to create a new list. Additionally, clicking that button or link generates a new token and saves it to local storage. And once the token has been created and saved, the user is then redirected to that new list view. And for users who do have a token already saved in local storage, they should be shown redirected to the list view. Now, those are a lot of terms, but what is this actually going to look like? So here we have the options. So if we have the create a new list, or we can join a new list. In this case, all we really want is we want to be able to create a new list. This is what it will look like eventually, but we don't have to get there just yet. The acceptance criteria for this is that if we do not, it'll allow them to create. Otherwise, we should be able to get a token from local storage and be redirected. So we don't even need to have the second aspect here. One other thing that's really important to note, and this is something that was pointed out within the cohort fall 2021 channel by Andrew, is that this line right here, the following script should be used to generate a suitable token from source lib tokens.js, is no longer correct. This was a function that was used in the last cycle of the Collab lab that was effective and great, and it worked really well, but now they've actually extracted it out into a separate package. So you'll be able to find it here on NPM, the Collab Lab shopping list utils. It's a great project. You can kind of import it. There's more details in the Slack message that Andrew has posted within the cohort fall 2021. But at the end of the day, it ends up with this package. And as you can see, we go into source, we go into tokens, and an index. You have this exported constant function here called getToken. And that's what you're going to be able to use instead of this exact file import. I hope that makes sense. All right, so that's the first issue. And again, all we really need to do is we just need to quickly have that new list button, or if there is already a token in storage, go to their list. Great. Second, as a user, I want to be able to add a new item to my shopping list so that I can start recording purchases. And we're going to be able to have 3 different items, 3 different ways of purchasing. So soon, kind of soon, or not soon. And an item is going to have the name, that soonality, as well as the last purchase date. So to be specific, the acceptance criteria for this is that a user is presented with a form that allows them to enter the name of the item and select how soon they anticipate needing to buy it again, soon, kind of soon, not soon. When the user submits the form, the item is saved to the database associated with the user's token. So kind of allowing you to have multiple lists based off multiple tokens. And along for the item name and an integer corresponding to the estimated number of days until purchase is saved. For now, this is just 7 for soon, 14 for kind of soon, 30 for not soon. In other words, a week, 2 weeks, or a month. Additionally, the last purchase date should be set to null initially so that you can create an item without purchasing it, as well as the item name should be displayed as a simple unordered list on the list view after they're added. What does that actually look like though? Let's find out. So looking at this is kind of, again, the more complicated, more detailed version. And this is similar to what we're going to be looking at. So at the end of the day, it will have to look like this. But for now, we just need to be able to input the name and the soonality, or the time period in which we want to actually purchase it. So yeah, and we need to be able to add it. Let's see, yes. So once it's actually in the list, again, this is kind of the final wireframe. Don't worry too much, but we need to be able to have that list, and we need to be able to kind of see how soon we want to purchase these items. All right. And again, since you guys are a trio for the next couple of weeks, I believe you guys are going to be working on both these issues, but however, I will let Jono correct me on that or completely defer to him. All right, well, I hope this was informative. Please ask if there's any questions, and good luck with the rest of the meeting.
Awesome. That was so nice. Cool. So any questions?
Yeah. Considering I need to push up a pretty crucial fix, should we try and get that sorted first? Like, hopefully it's not going to take too much time, but merging Shalom's and Fatima's branch right now would probably, be the most productive next step.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, April. I feel like Mandy, your fix is pretty close to being done. The functionality to get the like real-time updates might not be done, but like to stop the bleeding of infinite reads.
Yeah.
That might be a good like, let's just get that in.
Okay.
April, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think GitHub would actually be smart enough to know that your changes go to your work because you're working in different files. So you, in theory, like Fatima and Shalom could merge their work in, and then you could merge your work after. There's really no crucial need for one to be in prior to the other in that case. As far as moving forward, yeah, you're probably going to need to fix that update scenario just because the next steps have you adding and viewing the list. Although those are separate components, which means that when you go from the add view to the list view, it will update anyway. So it's even then it's not crucial. Because you are still going to do a mount and then you have to go back to the add page to make an add based on the way that that's wireframed at the moment. So that,
yeah, so that's a good point. Okay.
The numbers don't seem to be exponentially climbing. I've been kind of refreshing here and there to see. So it doesn't add the amount I would expect, but it's not, infinitely climbing either.
I'm wondering if the difference that you're seeing, like when you expected 105 and you got 122, I'm wondering if because GetDocs does have a listener on it, if it just periodically pings to check if there's any changes. That might be what you're seeing in that difference of what you expect to what you see.
Good, that could be.
Since that app is still kind of up and running, it might still be making that occasional check to look for differences.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, great question. So does that help answer at least the path forward?
Yes.
Okay.
For me anyway. Yes.
Okay, cool. Any other questions about this?
I was wondering for our pull request, looks like Jordan didn't review it yet, but since he's not available, I don't know if he'll be able to. So should we just go on and merge the pull request?
Yeah, I think it's fine to merge this pull request.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's out for a little bit. So
Yeah.
You guys need that in there in order to move forward. So.
Okay. Yeah. And then another question is, since we're doing both of the issues as a trio, should we like, how should we split it up? Like, should we split up or just do like one issue at a time, like finish 3 and then go on to 4 after we finish it?
April, you had a trio last cohort, right? How did
Yeah,
that...
we had to do, it's one of the terms that's used when it's more than 2 people, sometimes is mob coding or mob programming.
Yes.
So I would say that maybe just have 2 separate branches for that each one handles the issue separately. And then you can determine as your workflow is going, like how you want to coordinate between those 2 branches and keep your work so that you minimize your conflicts and things. But it would make sense that you would open up 2 separate PRs for each of those just so you can close the issues. If you want to look at them closer and you feel like it's realistic and it's not going to make the changes, 800 lines of code, you could do it as 1 branch and 1 PR and just close both issues with just the 1 PR. But I'll kind of leave that to you guys to determine as you look through them both. Unless Jonah has a thought on that.
No, that's perfect. That sounds good to me.
Yeah, the risk of putting them together on one is that the changes can get quite large, which makes it harder to review.
Oh, and then for the code review, are we going to be reviewing both of them? since we
Hmm.
since we worked on both?
Good question. I think the mentors would be the ones doing like the reviews, and I think that's all you really need, I would assume.
Unless there's some independent work, like if you
Yeah.
meet together for like
Mhm.
an hour or
Yeah.
two, and then you each divvy off some work to be done, which is another option that you can do, so that you can have some asynchronous work time as well. In which case, if you've done some work asynchronously, then the others would want to take a look at that.
Okay.
Great questions. Any more? Awesome. Cool. Well, we don't need to figure out the pairings, so that's nice.
No.
Everyone's doing those too. And I think April, you have the office hours this week.
I do, yes. So I will look at my calendar and put up a couple of options. Generally speaking, I think Wednesdays and Thursdays work really well for my schedule. So if you'd prefer it to be sooner though, if you think there might be some questions, I can probably make Tuesday work. So I guess since we're all here chatting, I could ask.
Wednesday or Thursday works fine for me.
Great.
Same.
I'll look at my calendar and see. And then just to refresh, I know Fatima and Shalom, you're both on West Coast time, but Mandy, which time zone are you in?
I'm on Mountain Time, so it's
Mountain.
1 hour earlier. No, yeah, it's
think it's
5
1
p.m.
hour
for me right now.
Yeah, okay, so it's 1 hour
Okay.
later, so not too bad, okay. Because last time we had all East Coast collabbies and all West Coast mentors, and so there was a 3-hour time difference, and I was always wanting to be cognizant that I wasn't bringing you together at 9 o'clock at night.
Well, awesome. That's it. Yeah, like let's get it.
All right, let's do it.
Cool.
All right,
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
First week. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye.